made it to episode 10 of the Silver Savage podcast. Today's show is a bit different. Steve and I decided that every fifth episode or so we would get on and chat about lessons learned, some current events, and what is new in the Silver Savage community. This episode we find some common threads between all our previous guests, we discuss some things that we learned, and I get to put Steve in the hot seat and ask him a few questions. But before we get into that, this episode is brought to you as always by Masada Tactical. For those who don't know yet, Masada Tactical is where Steve and I get to teach and train many people from all walks of life, from civilians to tactical operators, on how to best defend themselves and prepare for the realities of a violent encounter. It is where we met many of the guests we had on and get to share our knowledge while learning from others. Come try a class for free and visit training.masadatactical.com for a list of all our classes and seminars. Use the code SilverSavage10 for 10% off when you sign up. Steve, we're live. Cheers.
We are always live. Amen to that. We can breathe. We can breathe. We can walk. We can see. We can fart. We are richer than many men.
If life is measured by farts, I'm gonna live forever.
Oh Jesus! I mean, you know what? We have a fuel crisis right now. If we could harness the power of the anal methane gas, we'd be golden. We'd be the leader of energy and fuel in this world.
We are certainly going to be self-sufficient, and I think you're onto something there. But first of all, I wanted to congratulate us for making it to our 10th episode. The statistic I heard, most people don't make it this far. They start a podcast and then they kind of, fizzle away and don't make it to the 10th episode. So I think that's
awesome. Mazel tov. And I think one of the reasons for that, BK, is that when we got into this, it was more for our own self-development too, and we kind of realized there's so many people like us. So we didn't do this to become some celebrities or anything like that. We did this because we want to be better ourselves.
Yeah, I wanted to learn from people.
Yes, and we want to meet people. We want to learn from them and from all walks of life. And I think that's why we are where we are, because we're those type of people. Although we are BA in the things that we do, we're humble enough to know that we are always ready to learn something new, always ready to better ourselves, and always looking for that next thing, And
you know what I realized just by the guests that we had, because all the guests that we had up to now are people we knew already. They're friends, they're acquaintances, right? People that we're close with. And I kind of realized that how many of our friends are such savages in their own worlds, right? I mean, think about it. We had chiefs of police, we had black belts in BJJ, we had SWAT team leaders, we had entrepreneurs that are killing it out there, and this is our close circles. So
yes,
that
it's really cool. And it's on the flip side. We have these warriors, these savages, these silver savages that we know, and I never really picked their brains. And, it was this podcast, your idea, us coming together and doing that has exposed me to their knowledge. And even from episode 1 with Dr. Nager, I'm like, man, when we talked about testosterone health, I never once was on my radar until we spoke to him. And I know you've been, actively, working with him, and I'm going to follow up with him when it comes to that. I never would have thought of it if it weren't for Silver Savage.
I just got more pellets put in my butt yesterday.
Yeah, I was kind of jealous I wasn't there.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, what the worst part is? I was told I can't work out for 3 days. And I get this testosterone so I can go and work out more, and now I'm told to just sit in the corner for 3 days. That's the hardest part. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, now I'm going to use the last podcast that we dropped, which was with Paul Jackson, right? It's a person that I have with for the last year and a half, 2 years. He came and took an 80 hours intense class in 1 week, 80 hours with us. I didn't know the guy. I didn't know his story.
Yeah, that's when I first met him as well.
Yeah, so it was pretty awesome on that end. And then, every person that we had along this road, along this journey, their backstory is amazing. You know what? I can't really ask which one was your favorite, because A, it's not fair, and B,
it's not fair.
Right? Well, but there's also, I think there's something in each one that was really good. What was your favorite part?
Oh, I'll be honest. For me, I resonated a little more with Ed Norris, and obviously, I'm not a man of his stature, but just the story itself, that whole, kind of being being on top, becoming an underdog, being on top again. And he's from New York. I'm from New York, kind of like Dr. Nager as well. But, I grew up in the crime-ridden neighborhoods that he was policing. So it was interesting for me to see him and understand that it was that same drive that he brought to cleaning up the streets. And I remember that time that basically led to his reinventing himself and his success. And I really enjoyed that story because I think we all have similar stories in one way or another. Everybody's battle and war is different. But it was the same thing with me. Everyone has this misconception of me that, because I was in the Marines and I went into law enforcement, I was a sniper in the Army Reserves and this and that's all I wanted to do. And when I tell them, well, actually, I wanted to join the Coast Guard and be a firefighter. And it just takes everyone, by surprise. Like, what? But, my certain path took me another way. So hearing his story really resonated with me. But again, everyone had something phenomenal to say that I could have taken something away from. But again, New Yorkers, we stick together. So
is it New Yorkers? Is it Puerto Ricans? Is it
New Yorkers? New Yorkers.
You know what? I obviously I admire Odell's beard. I think that's pretty amazing beard, and we've made that into an Instagram phenomenon. I love talking with Mark about it, the dogs, about the canines, about Maddie's. I think every conversation was just great. You work with Chris Anderson.
Yeah, and that's another one. I'm glad you brought him up because for me it's weird because I'm gonna see Chris on the TV screen here soon. We all are. The series is gonna launch for anyone who's listening and watching. We Own This City coming out on HBO here soon. And I'm really happy for him because I've seen him do, little things here and there. But I've actually seen him operationally when I was on the decentralized SWAT team and he was a full-time member. And he was one of those team members that I really looked up to as a mentor. And he reciprocated that to me. He took me under his wing as a few others. So seeing him in that role and again, kind of like the whole Silver Savage idea, that warrior poet, knowing what he can do and then seeing him be able to act in an artistic way is pretty cool. Seeing both sides of that.
No, it's funny you bring the warrior poet because now I'm thinking about maybe a thread throughout all these guests. I mean, we have Stu Jones, who's again a SWAT team leader and a sniper for his unit, and he's an accomplished operator, right? We had Chris, who's a SWAT operator and an actor. We had people that write, that paint, that Ed Norris published a book. It's pretty cool. And being a student of history of martial arts myself, right? I know you're a student of history, but I specifically like history of martial arts, and knowing that the samurais at the time, that was a tenet. You had to learn art, but you also had to do an art, whether you painted, wrote haikus, whatever it was. It's a well-balanced individual, and so many of these people embodied it. What would be one lesson that you learned, like one thing that you took away from these conversations?
We're talking about collectively, that it's never over. Even when you think it might be, there is some reserve in that lizard brain of ours that we have not tapped into. I mean, you look at it scientifically, we use a little percentage of our brain. We don't. 4%. Yeah, we're not at our max capacity. And especially
about it, people are going to be like, BK only uses 4%, which may very well be right. But
right, that's all right. But it's an awesome. Your 4% is 100%. But which if you use your full capacity, be like 1,000,000%. But that's my biggest takeaway is that it's never over. We get stuck in this idea of this is what I have to do. This is what I've trained my whole life to do. I've gone to college for engineering, so I have to be an engineer. No, you do whatever you want to do. The sky's the limit. I always say this, you're limited by your imagination, and the only person that's going to stop you from doing anything that you want to do is you. And I'm realizing this with so many people, especially now, and we've had this conversation before that, I'm coming towards the end of a law enforcement career, whether it's, retiring naturally or medically. You've seen all the injuries I've been through and all the BS I've had to deal with institutionally, which, we can talk about later or save for another conversation. But I'd had to reinvent myself. And it was funny. I never thought I'd be an instructor until we beat the crap out of each other at MPCTC going through DT instructor school. And when you gave me the opportunity to train under your tutelage and then eventually teach, I realized, man, I'm good at this and I really enjoy it. And I realize I have a passion for passing on knowledge, whatever it is. And I never would have thought that, because I was always locked into, this is what I trained to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. So speaking to all these savages that we've talked to in the last couple of episodes have made me realize that it's never over. Even when you think this is all I know how to do, you've seen all the artwork I've started to do. And, I don't like to put that out there too much because it'll ruin my bad boy image. And I'll give a shout out to Turtle from Turtle's Tattoos, Sacred Circle Tattoos down in Crofton, just opened up, who pushed me to pursue art. But it was very therapeutic for me, and I'm good at it. And I never would have thought it, but it's never over. There's always something more to do. You know what I mean?
I can draw stick figures like no other. But I'll echo what you said. I mean, if there's one thing that I learned or took from all these people that we had on our show is, in one word, perseverance, right? The fact that they kind of stuck it out, whatever it was, either in law enforcement or in trying to publish a book. For Paul Jackson getting into radio, I mean, you heard his story. I mean, it's amazing. And most people would have given up, or just being a black belt in BJJ. I mean, it's not something that comes quickly, and somebody really has to stick it out for a while in order to get it. And all these people had it. I love the fact that we keep calling them savages, because honestly, there's no other word to really find them. They are savages.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yep. We got a lot of good comments. I'm super happy to say that as of now, recording this podcast, I know it doesn't sound like a lot for somebody that's been on it for a while, but we had over 500 downloads. This is going to be our 10th show, or the 10th episode being put out, and we keep getting people putting the 5 stars on, and that's absolutely amazing to us, and really
we thank you all for that.
Yep. And I think ultimately what it really comes down to, there's other men out there, and I say men because I think that's a majority of our listener demographic, that this resonates with, that they see the same things that we see, and they can take away from this guest the same thing that we just did. And hopefully we're encouraging someone out there to, not give up the fight. If there's a dream you want to pursue, keep going after it. It's not over. The other thing though, and because we keep talking about perseverance, I think another super important element is people can pivot pretty quickly.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean they give up on the dream. They just go on a different route. People that thought they're going to be doing one thing, and then all of a sudden, like, you know what? I want to do something different, and that's going to fulfill me even more. And they're able to pivot on a dime and go ahead and do so. And you've seen our business, for example, Masada, for the past 2 years, right? And all the changes that COVID kind of forced on us, and forced us to pivot a few times, come up with a few new programs, gave up on others. But ultimately, it didn't change the essence of who we are.
Right. And again, you talk about pivoting. You're my brother. I love you to death, and you're one of the very few people that I'd start World War III for, or with, correct. But you talk about pivoting, and especially with men, it's just the way we're built. Not that we're trying to segregate ourselves from women. I was raised by women. I grew up poor, Puerto Rican in the hood, and I always say I was raised by 2 mothers and 5 sisters, and no men. So it was probably tougher than growing up with men. So shout out to all the the silver savage women out there,
all the Puerto Rican women out there.
Yeah. But you talk about pivoting. My entire existence was one of service. I was in the Marine Cadets at the age of 10, more to escape the dangers of the inner city than anything else. But it gave me a sense of purpose. But my original goal was to join the Coast Guard, become a firefighter. I ended up, joining the Marine Corps and becoming a law enforcement officer because I felt it was going to give me more of that survival edge and, et cetera, et cetera. And then here we are, over 20 years in law enforcement, 15 years where I'm at now. You've seen the injuries that I've been through in my profession, and it's slowed me down. You know me as a fighter. You've seen me fight. You knew what my skills were as a shooter, as a whatever you want to call it. And kind of grinding to a halt can really have an effect on you psychologically and, not just physically. And shout out to my physical therapist, who we hope to have on soon, who really address that mental aspect as well. But I had to pivot. No longer could I compete in shooting competitions. I can't, grapple like I used to. I can't fight like I used to. I had to modify what I do and how I did it. And I realized I can still do it. I just had to modify it and pivot, so that was a big, big, big lesson to learn for me, and a hard one to learn too. Because I had to kind of, fight my mind before I had to adjust my body, to do it. But I had people like you shouting in my ear, so it was good.
No, but I think you hit the nail on the head in that sense. I mean, your pivot wasn't necessarily giving up on your essence. It wasn't that you stopped being a warrior or fighting for what's right or that life of service that you talked about. You just going about it a different way. So, you and I having conversations offline, obviously, and we talk daily and multiple times a day. But maybe your life of essence now is being of one that shares that experience and knowledge with others, and not
Correct.
necessarily being the first person through a door, right? So, it doesn't change who you are. So that perseverance is still there, but the ability to pivot and address, given the circumstances, being able to still do it, that's key. And, I look at you as a savage, and you are my idol. And I, you know that, right? So the only person I never want to be on the ground with, well, now it's two people, Paul Jackson and you. uh, but the reality is that you embody all of it, right? So actually, not the direction that I initially thought of taking this discussion. And you and I talked right before. What are we going to talk about?
But
And
that's the nature of the Silver Savage. It's
right,
organic. We go where the path takes us.
we pivot. But
We pivot.
and for those listeners, just so you know that we're going to try to do these conversations, just Steve and I, and in the future we're going to tackle some more current events and other stuff as well. But we're going to try to do it about every fifth episode or so. But I want to put you in the hot seat.
Uh-oh. Go
I,
ahead. Do
I
it.
want,
I ain't scared.
no, I know you're not. I want
Only
to.
of spiders, especially the parachuting ones that are coming, but I got a flamethrower on order, so I'm good.
You just told me about that bullshit. That is absolutely amazing. That
I'm
there's
look it up. It's allegedly they were saying it was from China, but it's a Japanese spider.
that
But whatever,
COVID too.
whatever. It's a nasty yellow spider. It's a paratrooper spider.
Dude, you gotta have kind of a little bit of respect to that, man.
I do, but it was a reason to get approval from my wife to buy a flamethrower, so I'm not pushing it.
No, every reason for a flamethrower is a good reason.
All right,
But,
hot seat.
but as someone that had to jump out of airplanes and hated it, the fact that the spiders are parachuting on their own free will, I respect that. I'm not gonna say it.
I only jumped out of helicopters, fast roping, and air assaulting stuff. Never out of planes with shoots.
So let me do this because I don't think that our listeners necessarily know Steve. So you allude all the time in our conversations to your background. You talk about being New Yorker. You talk about being raised by women. Your law enforcement background. Your uncle
Right.
being, but what makes Steve ticks? What's if you had to put what's the five most important things in your life right now? What are they?
I think 5 is too much.
Three.
For me is not even 3. For me, it's family. And when I say family, I think that's a very loose term because we unfortunately associate family with DNA, same blood type, same lineage, and I do not. I come from. I don't like to use the term a broken family, but my mom was a foster child.
Not traditional.
Correct, non-traditional. That's a perfect way to put it. Because you're my brother. That. And I'd give my life for you if I had to, and your family. But for me, it's that. It's family and emotion. We're emotional creatures. We're driven by emotion. Every decision we make, everything we do. So in being able to embrace that emotion, understand it, and thrive with it, which is the essence of a warrior poet. is big for me. I grew up with nothing. So what I have means everything to me. My little house is a castle to me. My $2 is a fortune to me. My friendships mean everything to me. And I cherish those friendships. I don't have a lot of friends. You've known that. I've told you how many, so many times, like maybe a handful of people I can call friends. And I've been in this state for over 20 years because I cherish that loyalty, and we've had some instances, you and I, where, that loyalty was challenged with my own work, and I stood firm. I grew up in, 1980s, Bushwick, Brooklyn, New York. The crack pandemic and the heroin pandemic was at its height. I watched at the age of 7 years old, people getting shot right in front of me on the stoop. If you grew up in the inner city, you know what a stoop is. A lot of things happen on the stoop. Don't mind that. That was an empty whiskey bottle. Um, um, and I got picked on a lot, believe it or not. I was bullied. I was, I was terrorized.
I have seen pictures of you as a teenager and as a young Marine. I actually have one of your pictures in my office.
The baseball card.
and you are a scrawny little dude, man.
Yeah, I was 115 pounds out of Marine Corps boot camp. So that tells you something. I was very shy. I was very
double your size.
And a lot of that had to do, I'm not going to get into the psychoanalysis of things, but of how I grew up. My mom was very protective of me because of how my father was. It was not the greatest relationships. He was not in the picture. But all that, eventually led to a specific moment in my life, which was actually I don't know if they highlighted in the book that we're going to be featured in, and I don't know if I'm allowed to mention that.
You can. That book is actually out and published, and I can actually give the link.
The Martial Artist Next Door.
Yeah.
But it was a moment, and this is always funny when I tell this story. So I was in band in junior high school, and it was outside of band class, and these three.
You ever go to band camp?
I never went to band camp. I played the trumpet and I was good at it. I actually did a solo for Giuliani when he came to visit one of our elementary schools. I got jumped by three guys, and I don't know what it was about that specific moment. Because, I've been through this before, you fight them off, you get beat up, whatever. It was just growing up in the ghetto. But when he says something about my mother, again, correlating with family, I snapped. And that was the first time, yes, that book. BK and I are featured in that book.
All right. For those that are not watching on YouTube and just listening, it is called Martial Arts in Your Life, the story of us, a survey of what we do and why. It is written by Lawrence Kane, Chris Wilder, and Eric Parsons. Eric Parsons wrote the foreword. And the book is essentially a collection of a bunch of martial artists, why they do what they do, what it is that they do, how they use it, and so forth. And yeah, both Steve and I are featured in that book.
Yes. So, I mentioned this incident in that book because I just started training martial arts. So I had a little bit of confidence because I had zero confidence. Again, I was picked on, but it wasn't to the moment that one of these douchebags said something about my mother, and I snapped. And when I say snapped, it wasn't like I didn't do something like some cool, like, I was studying ninjutsu with Sensei Vasquez, Shihan Vasquez at the time. But it was nothing cool. Was that?
Did you have shurikens, the ninja stuff?
Oh, yeah, we did all that stuff. But anyway, but I it was nothing cool. I grabbed my trumpet, swung it, hit some dude and bent the bell, grabbed the other one by the neck and just started choking him. And I remember it was funny because I was always looked at as that skinny, scrawny kid, who always got picked on and cried. And after that day, everyone thought I was just this psycho, like, oh my God, don't mess with him. I got my ears pierced, got my first pair of baggy jeans, got my first hoodie, and I always tell them, my sisters always laugh because they remember it. It was like I snapped from one day to the next. But that was growing up in New York City. It's kind of like, it was survival of the fittest. And that's what kind of switched my idea of, instead of joining the Coast Guard, to joining the Marine Corps, because I wanted to be the toughest of the toughest. I was like, I had to test myself, and I ended up joining the Marine Corps. I was company honor graduate. I was an E3 out of the Marine Corps, which is not an easy task to do, especially being a poor boy from Bushwick, Brooklyn, New York. That's just unheard of. And got promoted relatively quickly in my Marine Corps career, which again is unheard of. And did a lot of bomb stuff in the Marines. Although I was an aviation ordnance tech, I got assigned to an Army EOD unit in the Balkans, which was my first theoretical deployment and in being in theater. And I got attached to the Screaming Eagles, which was funny because this was after the 9/11 attack. So, I technically earned a deployed with them and earned a patch from the Army, although I couldn't wear it as a Marine. And then after that, joined, the Army Reserves because I still had that itch to serve. And not only that, but when I got out of the Marine Corps, I believe the second Iraq war started, and my gunny calls me, my former gunny. He goes, Steve, they're doing a stop loss and they're doing a recall. And they're recalling Marines back from our MOS. I'm like, that's cool. I don't mind as long as I get to go to war and do what I'm trained to do. He goes, no, if you come back, you're going to be a gate guard. I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm not standing on a gate.
Why is that?
It's to supplement the MPs and everyone else that are actually going. So, when you're already out, you don't have the consistent training as everyone else, but you can still supplement. I don't want to say menial jobs, but the mundane jobs that active duty military are going to do, in theater. So we were going to supplement the provost marshals and basically do base security and stuff like that stateside, CONUS. So I told him I didn't want to do that. And I asked him for ideas. He goes, well, join the National Guard or the Army Reserves and join an infantry unit if you want to fight. And I ended up doing that. Funny enough, though, that was my intention. I wanted to go fight again. Joined a unit that's disbanded now, 1st and 115th. Scout Sniper Platoon, and I could not get deployed to save my life. I went on some humanitarian missions locally, went to Katrina, and I'll have to say there's something to say about that, and I discussed this in some VA whatever. We had some meetings and whatnot, but deploying on a humanitarian mission within CONUS in the continental United States, specifically Katrina, was very traumatizing, especially for these younger men and women who had never been in combat, which you see a lot with the National Guard, who had never done anything. We were recovering bodies, U.S. citizens from our own home. We were in the middle of drug wars. I think I got shot at more during the response for Hurricane Katrina than I did for the response to GWAT, after the 9/11 attacks. And when you try to explain that to the average person, they don't understand that. A society collapses, it's survival of the fittest, and it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know what I mean?
Interesting that you said that, considering that, everything that we are experiencing nowadays, and how very easily we can go back to that as a society.
It's scary.
Yeah. No, that's interesting, though. It's, I think I talked about it in one of the previous podcasts that were recorded, but I think the main difference between the American military and the Israeli military is we actually fight in our own backyard, right?
Right.
It's our borders. So we see the direct impact on a daily basis. So it's interesting that you, as an American soldier, right, at the time being with the National Guard, saw that stateside. So you're driven by family. You obviously have all that warrior background and so forth. What is an aspiration, a goal that you have that you are aiming to complete in the next, let's say, couple months?
Next couple months.
You know what? Couple years. How's that?
Couple months of ambition. Well, first of all, I'd like to make it to retirement. Whether it's medical or regular, whatever comes first. But I think my overall goal, one, is to create a legacy for my family. But most importantly, be a mentor and a source of knowledge for these future warriors. I don't care who they are, where they're going, whether it's the Space Force or the Peace Corps, but preparing them, and whether it's physically or mentally for what they're going to endure and what they're going to see. I don't think even now with technology, being so exponentially advanced, we don't have enough of that. We rely too much on the mechanical, and we forget about the biomechanical, the emotional, the human aspect of things. And we still need to have that human connection. We saw this through this pandemic where we started segregating ourselves and people started having a lot of issues from, young children to adults. We need to maintain those connections, whether it's through savages, mentoring future savages or whoever. I would like to have something, whether it's an actual physical business or just myself, mentoring and preparing the future, to grab that torch and pass it forward so that my kids don't have to worry about it.
So being a little bit, selfish here, I guess, or self promotion, but I'm going to throw out there for our listeners to know that one of the things following those lines, right? One of the things that we're working on is a retreat where we actually get to mentor others and bring other experts to
Mhm.
mentor others and create that support system that, especially as men in our 40s or older, right, who still have the fight in them and still want to keep optimizing and improving their lives, right? How can we help them do that? So I'm looking forward to that one, and we're going to release more information on that soon. But I don't want to be premature about it. No, but that's awesome. 'Cause I see you mentor Masada, for example, in classes. I mean, how many members do we have who came in as disgruntled, teenagers, and
Yeah,
then
punk little kids.
yeah, and two of our former instructors and our equivalents of black belts. One is a police officer with
Mhm.
a very distinguished career, part of it in your agency.
Yep.
The other one is a captain in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Neither one of them, I think, came in thinking that's what they want to do with life. And then we had, I think, last time I counted, 9 of our members that went to Israel as lone soldiers, which means they served in the Israeli military without having a family there. All of them end up in combat units. I believe all of them in special operations.
Yeah.
Only one that didn't is a female, or we actually had 2 females. And just because they're not allowed to, but they still both were in combat units, which I think is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So you certainly have that impact on people. I think everybody that comes, in contact with you, um, gets that energy that you have, and really tries very hard to appease you. I know I do. Uh, yeah, if there's one person I would not want to fail, and you're my brother, but aside from my family, as you said, the DNA family and so
Hey,
forth,
that's my family too.
yeah, it's you. If you ask me to do something, if I know you count on me to do something, I'll for sure will do it. I mean, there's no way I would fail doing that because I would not let you down. Um, so that's awesome. So what are some other exciting things going on in your life right now? So you're on light duty right now, correct?
Yeah, so I'm back on the job, as we would say, which is kind of it's weird. It's an oxymoron because I have a police badge, but next to that police badge, my ID says civilian, and I'm okay with that.
How does that work?
Well, because I'm unable to qualify with my firearm, so I can't meet the requirements per the state mandate to have police powers. So although I have
Probably
the
shoot most people in your agency.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could. Yeah, yes, I could do it on one foot. If you discard my bad leg and my bad back, I'm sure I could still qualify. But my restrictions don't allow that. So I am back on the job. It has been a ride, as you know, and I don't like bringing this topic up too much, but it's you talk about goals. One of the goals I've set for myself, institutionally, if we want to use that term, is to kind of bring to light the discrepancies in the process when police officers specifically, because I can speak empirically on that, are injured in the line of duty. Um, we typically the one who gets the fanfare is the one who shot heroically or something like that. You get the big attention, but those that bust their knee or hurt their back tackling a suspect or something like that are almost looked at as if they're malingerers. They're kind of cast to the side. And it's unfortunate because the process itself, there's nothing very empathetic about it. Like you get hurt, you're out of the work, you're on workers' comp, hopefully. And if you're allowed to come back on light duty, you're stuck in some random post rather than taking advantage of your skills, knowledge, and abilities and putting them in a place that can, forward the objectives of an agency, you're kind of left behind, and it's unfortunate. So one of my goals is to kind of hopefully change that, make it more empathetic, make it more sympathetic for the officer, and let them know, you always hear this camaraderie and this family when it comes to military and law enforcement institutions, but a lot of times many people don't realize it's not practiced. It's not. And you've seen what I've been through. Shout outs to my attorney, workers' comp attorney, who will hopefully have on, Mr. Schultz, who's helped me fight through that bureaucratic BS and get me the care I needed, and my physical therapist, who have got me to this point where I never thought I'd be. You've been there by my side through multiple surgeries, but it screws with you up here. You know what I mean? Because one minute you're this high speed, low drag, cop. And then, the agency's like, you're doing a great job. You're making us look good. Oh, what? You can't do your job anymore? Yeah, let's stick you in here and, let's see what happens.
Well,
kind of thing.
I hope it works out for you. I know it's not a topic you want to talk to, and I don't know how much you can divulge anyways.
I could care less at this point.
We're going to leave it at that. So what are some guests you think we should have moving forward with Silver Savage? And I know we talked about, just so our listeners know, we still have a couple more podcast episodes that we pre-recorded are going to drop. People can look forward to having Dr. Piccolo on. We interviewed him a while back, and he's going to be Chris Straub, who's
his knives,
makes the Masada knife, and he's a former special operations operator in the U.S. Army. So talking about the transition from military to entrepreneurship, and talking some fatherhood lessons with him. I know we're talking about having your physical therapist. I really love their approach, and they work a lot with warriors. The savages.
Yes, they do.
So I think that would be a great insight for listeners. What else what would you like to see? Who would you like to see us interview?
Two things specifically. I'd like to get some insight. Believe it or not, and I know our target audience is men, but I'd like to interview some women, and talk about maybe relationship things and financial things and things of that nature. Especially when you get to this age when you're creeping towards that retirement. What does retirement look like? I just started dabbling in stocks, which I should have done a long time ago. Although I have through my thrift savings, but just personally playing with them, getting some of those people in there too. Because I'll tell you what, one of my best friends works on the at the NYSE on the floor. He's a trader, and man, they're savages themselves.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to perceive something and make a decision on it like that is no different than observing a threat and engaging it or deciding not to engage. They're just doing it on the financial level. So I would love to see that as well, because especially being at our age, I don't want to work forever. I want to kick back on a rocking chair like the one I'm sitting in now with a bottle of whiskey and just stare at the ocean and then listen to the breeze.
You'll go nuts in no time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'd probably be making pipe bombs or something while I'm sitting.
Yeah, probably. But you're right. We started this podcast and we started this episode by talking about us being completely selfish and wanting to learn from people. I was thinking, when I first brought the idea to you, I was thinking of the challenges that men in our age group, in our demographic face. So close to retirement, as you said, what's their financial status? Can they even retire? And how can they go about it? So investments and so forth. Talk about health and wellness, which we've had Dr. Nager on. We're going to have more people on. Talk about starting businesses as additional streams of income, or just people following their dreams. They may have worked for a corporation or an agency if they were in law enforcement for 20, 25 years, but now, what's next, and how do they make that transition? You talk about relationships. I know I'm, for example, been divorced 3 times. I'm gonna be married again soon, and for the last time, I told my fiance that I get married one more time because I really love her and I think she's the one, and she's awesome.
Yeah.
And she's my kind of crazy, if you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
But I told her I'm never getting divorced again. So one of us will have to die, But a lot of men in our age group,
and she is aware that she's marrying both of us, right?
She is
in
aware.
theory.
I'm also trying to figure out if the baby we had is mine of yours or yours.
I mean, it could be both of ours.
Yeah, we'll share. That's her yelling in the back.
I heard that.
I need my own studio. That's why I'm getting out of it, and better microphone and earphones. But no, and but a lot of men in our age group are back on the dating scene. And I'll be honest, if I had to go out and date now, would have no clue what to do,
Yeah.
how to go about it, and yeah,
Yeah, I'd be
there's some
that guy that owns 4 dogs, an axolotl, and some fish.
that works,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
uh, but no, getting experts to talk about relationships, how to make sure the one you have stays as strong as possible, or if
Yeah.
you're not in one, how to get one that's
Yeah.
meaningful. So I think there's a lot of good guests we have lined up, and keep pushing in that
Yeah.
direction.
And speaking of relationships, that's a topic we can have next time between you and I. I mean, I think we can both speak on that because I know I've been up and down in my own marriage, especially in our professions and what we do. It's not pretty. It takes work. So that's definitely a conversation we can have. But before we go, I want to ask you because we're both avid readers. Books are addictions, I think, for us, and I read religiously. What are some books you're reading right now?
So I'll be honest, I can't tell you the name right now just because I can't remember. I'm reading 3 books. I typically read 3 books at a time.
So do I.
One of them is more business oriented. So I'm reading one, and I mentioned in the Dr. Piccolo's podcast. It's by a lady talking about how to be your own PR person. That's the one next to my bed right
Right,
now.
and you shared some of that with me.
Yeah, and how to use social media and how to do press releases and stuff like that. Being a business owner, an entrepreneur, it's important. And some PR firms just charge an arms and a leg, and it's not something that I feel I should be doing. If a lot of that I can be doing myself. So I am reading that one. I also like the all self improvement stuff. So I am rereading the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi.
Yes.
Um, it's it's an all time favorite. There's a lot of lessons there for obviously for warriors, but same lessons can be applied in business, can be applied in relationships, can be applied in a variety of situations. So that is another one I'm reading, and I just got in the mail today, and I'm going to get it and start reading it. It's Ramsey, How to Become a Millionaire. So talking about
Yeah.
investment. I like his approach to personal finances in the past, and just kind of setting a budget and working out. So this is his new release, and he just came up with it last month, I believe. So I ordered it. It just came in. I am a big fan of actual physical books. So I do read some on
Yes,
devices, but I like the feel of a book. I
I
like
am with you.
and I like reading before I go to sleep. So having a cell phone or computer in front of my face is not conducive to that. So
And it's
just
not healthy anyway.
right, correct, exactly. So just reciprocating with the same question. What are you reading now?
Oh man, so I'm a little more ADD when it comes to books than you because you know me. I gotta balance the serious with history with entertainment. Um,
I don't read
I
anything that's fiction.
so yeah, so I read. I mean, you name it. I read sci-fi. I read history. You know, I'm still working on a FDR's biography. I'm reading on a biography of New York called Gotham. I just finished The Last Pirate of New York, which was kind of a crime book. It was really good. Finished up Psychology of the Unconscious for my own self benefit, which was Jung talking about the shadow. And I'll let our viewers and whoever want to explore that because that is way too deep to get into here. And I just started reading a military book called Six Legged Soldiers, and it's a history of warfare using insects. You know, you think about when they gave the Indians blankets with fleas and stuff like that, and all the way up to now, and it's very interesting because it goes into nanotechnology as well, which is scary as shit. So, Six-Legged Warriors. That's the
Fascinating,
one I'm reading
actually.
now. What's that?
That sounds fascinating.
It is. But I read a little bit. I even read comic books. You know that I love graphic novels. Punisher was my hero growing up as a kid, as morbid as that sounds. But
Still is.
Yes, he still is. But yeah, those are the ones I finished up now. I have God knows how many more books in the queue to read, and I'll keep reading till I can't read no more.
Sounds good. Sounds awesome. Well, Steve, I think we're doing a good job, if I may say so myself, so far with the podcast. I'm looking forward to keep growing this and moving forward and building our community. I will throw a couple of teasers out there. We are working on the website for the Silver Savage, where people will be able to buy some merchandise, um, sign up for events, find all these podcasts and download them. So that is in the making right now.
Mm-hmm.
Say we have an event coming up. The first one is going to be in July. We're going to release more information on that soon. And as always, if people want to reach out to us and they want to submit questions, suggest guests, or even want to be guests themselves and feel that
Yes.
they can contribute to the tribe, you can find us on Instagram on silver underscore savage 45. And I use 45 just so people know because that's the median age of 40s. Um, so silver underscore savage 45. Same thing on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. So I'm looking forward to interacting with the listeners more and keep having fun with this.
Yes, yes. And we'd love to have our listeners on this podcast too. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be anything. Just got to be a savage.
Yep, and that comes in many different ways.
So many ways.
On that note, Steve, it is late. It is. I can't even see. Quarter of 10, man. I'm so old. Quarter of 10 is late. Is late. When
Yeah,
when you get up at 5 in the morning, it gets late.
yeah.
So I know you have to go to work tomorrow. I have to go to work tomorrow. It's almost the weekend. So have a good night, and I'll catch you tomorrow.
Until then, Shabbat Shalom, even though it's not Friday.
Not yet, but close enough. Awesome.
Close enough.
Later, Father. Buenas noches.